Welcome to Residential Tech Talks. I'm Jeremy Glowacki, Executive Editor of Residential Tech Today. This week, Alex Bazhinov joins us from Charlottesville, Virginia, where he is founder and CEO of Lumin. Lumin's smart panel is currently adopted by hundreds of solar and energy storage installers, providing a system for retrofitting an existing circuit breaker panel to perform energy data analysis and circuit control. Data on connected appliances and systems is gathered and analyzed to assist homeowners in better understanding their home energy habits. An inventor and entrepreneur, Alex had the idea for Lumen while tending to his first startup, DreamPower, which he founded at the University of Virginia's iLab while earning his graduate degree at UVA's Darden School of Business. Lumen recently announced Lumin Edge, which is a new modular smart energy system and smart home application that gives homeowners the flexibility to manage, monitor, and optimize their home energy usage. Alex Bazhinov, thanks for joining me today on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, when I first learned about your company, it was in connection to a press release about Lumin Edge, which I just mentioned. And you know what? It's one of these categories or verticals that I've been covering for the past 5 years or so: energy management, and the evolution of more of a DIY or homeowner controlled sort of scenario. With apps and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And when I saw that your backstory was from a kind of an incubator or lab there at UVA, the iLab, I really wanted to kind of learn about that a little bit more first, because that was fascinating to me. Can you just kind of explain what iLab is there at UVA?
So, Jeremy, thank you for asking about that, because that brings such great memories to me. So, as you mentioned, I went to Darden School of Business at the University of Virginia, which was a classic MBA 2-year program. But unlike many of my classmates, I was not looking to recruit and get a job in a larger company, which is fairly standard for anybody who goes to MBA.
Okay.
And instead, I was looking to start my own clean tech company. And Darden had, and still has, the program is still there and quite successful, has this program called iLab, or Business Incubator, at Darden School of Business, which provides Darden students and now a broader Charlottesville community with a really great launchpad for their startup ideas. Not necessarily in clean tech or even energy space at all. It's very broad and diverse, but in general, iLab gives you great resources anywhere, starting from space, just pure physical office space, to support, legal support, accounting support, training, coaching, putting you in front of a number of great Darden professors. I mean, that's especially important for those who are non-Darden students. If I recall correctly, there's even like a little bit of money involved, like they may give you a little check. So it was a great way to start a company for someone who is a foreigner like me, because I did come from Moscow to get my MBA at Darden. Mm-hmm. And that's I can only say really, really good things about that. So if folks from the iLab and Darden in general listen to this, hey, thank you so much once again.
That's great. Well, so let's backtrack then to how you even learned about Darden and this opportunity when you were working in a career already in Moscow, and you had we're far removed from the idea of green technology, because you were working in more of a fossil fuels business, correct? Back in Russia?
Yes, that's correct. I spent first, I think, almost 10 years of my career being exactly on the other side of the fence. I was working in the mining sector, so very closely involved with fossil fuels and general mining. So anything that's being excavated from underground, so metals, for example, or coal, or what have you. So in many, many ways, that experience was the whole reason why I decided to go into clean tech or clean energy, because I saw firsthand how unsustainable everything is about, us extracting, and using fossil fuels in general natural resources. And there are two aspects to that. One that I believe is very broadly understood these days, or at least getting broadly understood, which is it's kind of very bad to burn fossil fuels because they just pollute the atmosphere and cause climate change, and there's a lot of carbon dioxide emissions associated with that, et cetera, et cetera. So I think everybody's more or less aware of that.
Yeah.
But there's another one which doesn't really get that widely spoken, at least outside of the kind of whole mining industry, which is it gets more and more difficult to extract stuff, let's call it that, from and it gets more and more expensive and more difficult to locate new resources. The ones that we can locate are getting farther and farther. They would be somewhere up north or under the seabed or ocean bed. And just really it's really difficult to get to them. And so the whole industry has to run as quickly as it can, only to stay at the same place, at the same rate of extraction, and in kind of delivering the same amount of for example fossil fuels to power up the humanity. So that is also critical, because we have to understand that it just gets really, really difficult to get stuff from underneath, and then it's really bad to burn it. So those were the two main reasons why I thought to myself, hey, we really need to figure out how we transition to the next um, abundant, clean, renewable energy source. And by the way, hey, we have this nuclear reactor in the sky that emits as much energy as we all need, the whole humanity. Sun can power the whole humanity for a year with the energy it sends towards Earth. I believe within just a couple of hours. If we could capture all of that, we're good for a year, just within a couple of hours. And we just need to figure out the technology, and that was why I kind of shifted my focus from natural resources or mining to clean energy.
Well, before Lumen comes along, you have this startup, DreamPower. So, what was that? How did you come up? Did you come to the MBA program with this idea in mind that I need help to get this going, or were you there and figured it out while you were at Darden?
So I don't think I have ever mentioned this to anyone publicly. So this will be kind of first time. So I knew very little about energy or clean energy technologies, or in general this market, before I came out to Darden.
Okay.
I was coming from the mining world, and I was coming from the country where clean energy is not an industry at all.
Okay.
Like, you just can't learn that stuff because there are no clean energy companies in Russia. No one does this. I don't think the situation even today has changed dramatically, but back then, almost 10 years ago, just didn't exist. So I came out here with a very clear idea, and within 2 weeks of being at Darden and talking to a bunch of folks and professors, one professor to whom I just said, "Hey, I have this great idea," and he goes like, "Well, have you ever heard about this company called Solar City?" Because my idea at the time was, hey, why don't we just put solar panels on people's roofs without charging them anything up front, and then charge them for the energy, which is obviously a PPA, or power purchase agreement. That's a typical industry standard term that was widely used by Solar City, company that was later acquired by Tesla, or a bunch of other amazing companies in the solar space. So I had that idea, and turn out I was right. And that was the big confirmation for me which is like, okay, it's okay that someone is already doing it, but my idea was right. And so I looked around and I applied the same concept, which is no money down for the end user, for the customer, but getting something of value. But I applied that to energy efficiency. And so DreamPower was providing small, medium sized businesses with energy efficiency upgrades to their facilities. So LED lights, smart thermostats, light motion sensors, et cetera, at no upfront cost, like literally $0. And then the company would share into the savings as a recurring revenue downstream. So that was the business model, and it actually, it has a name. It's energy service companies, or ESCOs, are very abundant, but they typically provide this sort of services to either very large industrial or very large commercial facilities, or government facilities or buildings, what have you. But Main Street businesses, even today, are quite often overlooked. They just don't get that attention because they're not large enough. So that was DreamPower, and I must say I learned a lot by doing that. I learned all the things about the how electrical grid works, and how electricity gets supplied to any facility, and what happens inside, and how solar works, and et cetera, et cetera. So that was kind of my my education out there in the field. And I scaled the company to dozens and dozens of paying business customers, which was great. And obviously, then I kind of moved forward towards founding Lumin.
Well, let's start talking about Lumen, but first we will take a short break for a commercial.
Founded in 2005 by a team of highly skilled audio veterans, Wet Sounds is an award-winning, Texas-based marine audio company bringing a level of performance, style, and durability unparalleled in the audio industry. Wet Sounds is proud to introduce you to the Venue Series 110-volt 1200-watt 4-channel amplifier system. The VS1200 amplifier was specifically designed to power Venue Series products while utilizing a 110-volt power source. Included is the VS-LS ENC, a purpose-built landscape enclosure designed to house the Wet Sounds VS1200 amp with the plug-and-play media center in harsh outdoor environments. Learn more, visit wetsounds.com.
Welcome back. I'm Jeremy Glowacki, and I'm talking with Alex Bazhinov, founder and CEO of Lumen. Alex, before the break, we were kind of leading up to your current company. Now, I'd love to know how you transitioned from that startup to what Lumen became, and what your idea was there initially for Lumen.
Yeah. So as I mentioned already, right? I learned a lot about how the energy grid operates through my previous company, in all of the latest trends in the energy world, so to speak, and especially clean energy and technologies. And what became really clear to me was that the state of technologies on solar, energy storage, electrical vehicles, and a bunch of other things, those technologies have advanced dramatically over the past even 10 years, but and more than that. And the good news is that I believe that we are behind the kind of point of no return, which means that solar just makes economic sense. And maybe still not everywhere, but in most places it does. No longer it's just this, edge case of, oh my God, this only works for a facility that just cannot be connected to the grid. That's not true. And so what I realized is that moving forward, we'll be only seeing more and more of solar, of home batteries, of electric vehicles that are capable of powering, charging from your house, but also charging back or discharging technically, in powering your house, in other things. And the big question was like, well, how do we accommodate all of that, and how do we manage all of that? In many, many ways, I feel like the grid is moving to a state where each individual building will be a mini grid of its own, and it will be managing the many supply sources. One of them is still, the grid as we know it, right? All buildings will still be connected to the larger grid, and that supply will be just one of the potential sources for power inside your home. But you could also have solar panels, you could also have battery, you could also have your electric car in your garage that could discharge the battery and run your house if that's the preference. And then, of course, on the other side, you have all different things in your house consuming electricity, and all our appliances, lights, and what have you. And so the idea behind Lumen is that in the with the advancement of all the clean energy technologies, you have to enable buildings to balance that supply and demand of electricity inside each building. And that was the whole premise. Okay, how do we do this? And naturally, first we had to take the route of building some technology to manage electrical loads, because that was not present at the time when I founded the company, in how to best do that. And we came up with our first product, which I believe you already mentioned today, Lumen Smart Panel. And that was kind of a retrofit system to an existing circuit breaker panel that allowed to manage each individual circuit, provide data on the energy consumption, provide control to that circuit, etc. And now we're moving forward as we learned a lot, and we're advancing the technology, and that's the Lumin Edge family.
Right. So I am somewhat familiar with the idea of retrofitting the circuit breaker panel, and so you're putting little devices into the panel, the existing panel, to be able to connect to the network, I'm assuming, and to then analyze what's going on throughout the home, and also to enable switching from, I guess, a solar array to pull from the battery and the various, and maybe the electric car kind of connection there. So just managing all of that, is that what's happening?
In many ways, I believe what you described mostly refers to devices that are called home energy monitors, that do indeed go inside the panels and kind of have those clamp-on sensors, also called CTs or current transformers. And they measure electricity, right? They give you the data. Where we kind of advanced with Lumin Edge, with our new product, we advanced that to, first of all, adding control. So each line in your house now can have automatic control of that circuit through a Lumin Edge module that can be installed anywhere along that wire. And that's part of the great flexibility that our new product offers, is that you don't, unlike Lumen Smart Panel, for example, that had to be installed in proximity, very, very close to your existing circuit breaker panel, which was limiting. Sometimes you just don't have the space. Sometimes it's, in a very kind of packed space, and you just don't have enough real estate there. But now you can plug that module on that wire that goes from your panel to your appliance. So let's say your water heater, your pool pump, name any appliance in your house. There's a wire that connects that appliance with your circuit breaker panel. And anywhere you can access that wire. Could be next to the panel, but also could be next to the appliance itself. Maybe it's your water heater that's sitting in a technical closet, right? Or in your garage or in your basement. Then that wire it is literally wired up, right? The water heater is wired up with a wire that goes to the panel. So you can totally install the module, Lumin Edge module, on that wire. And with that, you have the ability to get this distributed control over many, many different appliances, in as many as you want, because you can install as many modules as you want. You can start with one if that's your preference. And and through that, you can control, you can measure your energy consumption. And yes, as you mentioned, you can totally automate your habits and switch towards, for example, solar consumption or whatever your needs are through software. Yeah.
So the advantage seems to really be with someone who has solar installed in their home and battery backup and that sort of thing. But you've said, I've read in your information that you can definitely get advantages too without any of that, just being aware of where your consumption is taking place in the home. What then is the action for the homeowner if they're seeing, okay, well, we have maybe a dehumidifier that's always the culprit in a basement or something that's very power hungry, and you see there's a big draw coming from that. Do they then just simply say, okay, well, during these peak hours, I shouldn't be running that, or what are the control aspects or things that the homeowner is going to be empowered to do?
So, in fact, you just mentioned some of the markets or groups of homeowners that would clearly benefit from Lumin Edge, even without having solar and storage or energy storage. So, folks who, for example, happen to live in either time of use rates or demand charge rates, which is even more penalizing utility rate structure. There are about 7 million people in the US with those types of rates today. And you can totally create automations where you would say, hey, here's my peak hours, and I really don't want my pool pump to run in those hours. I really don't want my humidifier to run in those hours. I would love to shift that consumption into more cheap time of the day, or potentially time of the night. In the system allows you to do that, even though your end appliance, your pool pump or your humidifier may not be smart, right? It may not have that ability to create schedules or controls. Lumin Edge allows you to do that.
Okay.
Or in demand charge case, so by demand charge is when your utility is monitoring your overall home's power load, and says it looks for the highest 15-minute period throughout the month, and then says, aha, your maximum was that. So here's a certain a rate or a fee associated with that number. That's called demand charge, or your power demand. And you could just tell, hey, Lumen, I want to keep my house under certain threshold. Do not exceed this, because otherwise I'm getting penalized by my utility company. I don't want to pay. I want to reduce my bill. And the system would just do that. The system would just keep, by making sure that, for example, several large appliances don't run at the same time. That your water heater, electric water heater, does not run at the same time when your AC system is running. It's a fairly straightforward algorithm that cuts off a big chunk of load from your home demand, and that means big savings for the homeowner. And then there's of course the whole array of value propositions for people with solar and with batteries. And there mainly there of course our core market with Lumen Smart Panel, people with batteries, and the system allows them for a whole home backup on a single battery, meaning they can save $30,000-$40,000 on day one after installing the system, because they don't need to oversize their battery. And then there are cases like what we're seeing in California right now, where utilities or state regulators technically are changing the rules on how people sell back electricity to the grid. That's called net metering. And technically, the reason why it was called net metering was because you were selling at the same price as you were buying from the utility company, hence net. These days, we prefer calling it asymmetrical net metering, because all of a sudden you're selling to the utility at a much lower price than you're buying. And that puts homeowners with solar into a big disadvantage economically. And the system allows them or helps them to consume that power anywhere in their house. Just don't sell it back to the utility. Let's find that place to park that electricity. Do you have a pool pump? We'll run that. Do you have an electric vehicle? We'll charge it, and so on. Right. So these are just examples.
Yeah.
So
that caught my eye because I have always heard about the advantage of being able to sell back to the grid, but that always seemed complicated, and I didn't realize about asymmetrical metering until I read your press release, and then to see that you can definitely redirect it within the excess solar power within the home to be consumed. That was a game changer to me. Really cool the way that works. How complicated is it to set up? I'm sure that you're not going to say it's complicated. It's trying to make this not a hard thing, but for the consumer who has your Lumin Edge product, they set it up. How does it connect to what their utility scenario is and how they're billed and that sort of thing? What's that upfront setup like?
So for Lumin Edge, there are, generally speaking, two components of the system. The first one is called Lumenhub or Lumin Edge Hub, and that's your fairly standard classic smart hub, right? Something that sits next to your Wi-Fi or internet router, simply plugged into the wall electric outlet, and your Ethernet cable goes into the router. That's it. So that's easy. Then there are Lumin Edge modules, and so these are the modules that I mentioned that are installed on individual wires. And I, as much as I want to say it's super simple, it is, and we made it purposefully extremely easy and straightforward to install, with the installation time being, well, definitely less than 10 minutes. I can do this in less than 5. That being said, we do strongly recommend for homeowners to get either qualified electricians or get the system installed alongside with their solar and battery system if they're getting that. So then it's done by the installer, or tap into the network of multiple hundred of Lumen certified installers that we have across the country.
Okay.
And I'm saying that because we're very mindful of homeowner safety.
Sure.
And of course, there are a lot of folks who are very comfortable with doing minor electrical job in their homes.
Sure.
In general, I must say that installing a Lumin Edge module is easier than replacing your light switch.
Okay.
If you're comfortable with that, and if your local electrical code in your jurisdiction allows for that sort of job to be done by a non-electrician, you're absolutely fine installing that. But there are jurisdictions in the US where the code is extremely rigid and strict, and you have to get an electrician for that job, unfortunately. But even with that, less than 10 minutes per module, and you're all set to go. From there, it's pretty much a software setup, which can be done by the homeowner. It's all in the app. You connect, different individual Lumen modules in the app. You also can connect various smart appliances that you may already have. So do you have a smart thermostat? Do you have other, smart, whatever that may be, right? Smart fridge, for example. Or maybe you have, or you want to add them down the road, smart plugs, things that just plug into wall outlets. You can also do that. We're integrated with a number of brands for smart plugs, and you can add them into this energy management system. So now you have a broader reach inside your house, even though you may not have that many Lumen devices there.
So then in that software in the app, it's connecting to you're putting in your utility information, who your power provider is on the grid, to then kind of figure out the metering scenario if there is one. Or
correct. Yeah. You are So essentially, right, the system would give you a few options based on your location. But unfortunately, I must tell you that it is extremely difficult to keep tabs on all sorts of utility rates that exist across the US. It's just borderline impossible. There's a number of nonprofits or even startups that are trying to do that in just that as their only goal. In even with their products, we have found that they're quite often outdated, right? So you just have to be updating that. So we do rely on the user to provide some details, but again, nothing too complex or too difficult, really. It's just, hey, well, what is your utility? What's the name of your plan? What's your electricity rate? And if it's time of use, then you just have to specify those periods. That's it.
Right. And if you're working with an electrician or someone local there, they're probably going to be quite aware of what those scenarios are
Of course.
as well. What about the number of modules that would be in a typical home? And I know it's hard to kind of average what that would be, but how many do you think you might be talking about for a home?
So in general, right, that number is absolutely flexible.
Right.
You can start with one, you can go all the way to, however large your home is. And I don't know, let's say you have 87 or whatever the number is. But we absolutely do recommend to focus on your largest appliances, your largest circuits.
Okay.
I personally don't see a lot of value for someone to installing a Lumen module to control their bedroom circuit, for example, because from the energy standpoint of view, well, what are you controlling? Your light on your nightstand and your phone charger,
right?
Maybe your TV. That's it. But then you can do that by different ways, and sometimes there may be even more advantages to the homeowner. Could be a smart light bulb or a wall plug that I already mentioned. But for your largest appliances, your water heater, your dryer, your washer, your dishwasher, your fridge, those kind of things, that's where really that's where Lumin Edge really shines. And we believe that on average, we have, even our current product, Lumen Smart Panel, has 12 circuits. We believe that's a good number, and we've seen the industry aligning with us on this, and a number of other products are focusing on this number. So I would say, with the the data set that we have collected on all the Lumen Smart Panels that we have installed, that it's somewhere between 10 and 16. Depends on the house, depends on how many AC systems you may have, or how large is the house, but that would be a good range.
Okay.
Again, some of these could be substituted. If you have a smart thermostat, we can connect to it. Then you don't need a Lumin Edge module on it.
Right.
But yeah.
And then availability. When is Lumin Edge going to actually be on the market?
Oh, that is such it's an extremely simple but also extremely difficult question. In that date changes all the time. I must say, not only goes back and forth because we're living through probably the worst supply chain crisis that at least the electronics, but probably all industries have seen. I mean, I'm sure you've heard about things like Sony PlayStation not being available,
right?
Or not enough cars, or what have you, and it's all kind of largely same root cause: not enough chips, not enough microchips. So we expect right now, we expect Lumin Edge to be available mid next year.
Okay,
and that's the goal. That's the target. We work hard to make it happen, but as I said, the times are tough. It's extremely difficult to ramp up a new supply chain for a new product these days. We've done quite well in supporting supply chain for our existing products, but ramping up a new one, that's a lot of challenge, and that's a lot of fun.
I thought maybe I would get through my interview without mentioning COVID-19 or supply chain, but it's a technology podcast, and it's impossible because it's always an effect on our world.
I'm sure everybody who's in the tech industry is absolutely facing this. That's a huge challenge right now, and I believe it may not be even spoken about enough. But
well, we're to wrap up on maybe a little bit more of a positive note on that. I don't want
absolutely.
to. What would you say the most the best markets for you right now? I know California is much more solar oriented just because of regulations saying that they have to at this point. I think on new construction. So there are the other areas where the energy pricing is lower, perhaps, that it's not as attractive to go solar. I'm just thinking that solar is definitely a driver for your product. Obviously, it's not the only way to do it, but what markets would you say are your strongest?
Yeah, absolutely. Solar and storage are some of the strongest drivers. I must say, so it could be anywhere from island geographies like Hawaii or Puerto Rico, and we work quite a lot there, to for sure California, but also in general Southwest,
right?
Arizona, for example, may not be as popular for solar. I mean, they have a lot of sun, but they have certain regulation kind of constraints, but most of the households in Arizona have demand charges, something that we talked about today, right? And even without solar and storage, that's that becomes a great product for them.
Right.
But then also naturally northeast and southeast, they have quite strong and growing solar and energy storage presence. Texas, oh my God, after what happened last winter. Their resiliency push is so strong and absolutely visible on the kind of home battery market. So definitely one of the core markets for us as well.
Well, very good. I wish you well on the supply chain, as I do for any technology company right now. But it sounds like a great product and something that's much needed in our challenging energy times as well. So, Alex, thanks for taking the time to chat today.
Jeremy, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to talk to you. It was a pleasure to talk to all of your listeners, and thanks again.
Alex Bazhinov is founder and CEO of Lumin. You can learn more about his company at lumensmart.com. That wraps up today's show. If you're new to Residential Tech Talks, please subscribe to the weekly podcast on your favorite platform and consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Also, check out all the latest residential tech news at the magazine's website, restechtoday.com, where you can also subscribe to the bi-monthly print or digital magazine and to our Tuesday and Friday email newsletters. Until next time, please stay safe, stay inspired, and let us know if you have a great story to tell.
Residential Tech Talk, lighting specialist to residential tech.
Home automation device, home or smart house.